Parker, in just the past couple of days, we had the announcement of some kickoff times, and that always gets the juices flowing when you can tie a kickoff time and a network to a particular game. It makes college football feel just a little bit closer. And so we've got a few here in weeks 1 and 2. Temple, not going to get too many people excited. However, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 Central, primetime game, ESPN. So that's a good slot on a Friday. How do you feel about the Friday games in this matchup in particular?
Oh, man. It's just, it's weird to me because, I have a weekly rhythm, and generally Friday is my high school football day, right? I'm out watching high school games on Friday nights. I think the only Friday game I've ever covered was the Black Friday game last year where Oklahoma played TCU on 11 a.m. the morning after Thanksgiving. So it'll be a departure from the norm, certainly. Temple's a solid program, but obviously for a school like Oklahoma, I don't think that's anybody. I don't think that's an opponent that they're going to be seriously challenged by, nor should they. So I would think that's a tune-up for Jackson Arnold and that Oklahoma offense in particular, start to give us a sense of how explosive they truly do have the potential to be come the SEC slate. But again, as I try to emphasize every single year, and this is a lesson that OU fans had to learn the hard way in 2022, what happens in non-con play can be a reliable indicator of what type of team you have on your hands, and it might tell you absolutely nothing about what that team's going to look like come the conference slate. Oklahoma went 3-0 to start the Venables era in 2022. They had no trouble whatsoever with UTEP. They took Kent State to the woodshed. They went up to Lincoln and destroyed Nebraska 49-14. That was a team that ended up going 6-7. So Temple, Houston, Tulane, 3 solid non-conference games against programs that aren't pushovers by any means. But nonetheless, 3 games that Oklahoma should win. I think you're really going to have to scrutinize how they play and how they approach those 3 games, though, if you're going to be able to come up with some surefire takeaways as to how they're going to look on September 21st when Tennessee comes to town and beyond in year 1 in the SEC.
Ironically, as you well know, it was strange that Nebraska team was really bad in terms of wins and losses, but took like some of the best teams in the country down to the wire and played like 1-score games every week. Oklahoma was the only team that blew them off the field. It was even more egregious than 35 points, as it was completely no contest at halftime. Houston, what comes to mind there, obviously the 2 teams spent 1 season together in the Big 12, but did not play. But the Derek Ward game against the Baker Mayfield team, in which Houston pulled off an upset of another Big 12 champion Oklahoma team in 2016, if I remember correctly. So that one comes to mind, and that's an SEC network. So Oklahoma, of course, dives into its new conference affiliation there.
Yes, it was indeed 2016. I appreciate the Derek Ward reference. I think you're actually thinking of Greg Ward, who ended up playing wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles for a while there. But Houston, obviously first-year head coach Willie Fritz, who came from Tulane to Houston this past offseason, is a guy that you would expect to be winning at that program before too long. The question is always, how long does it take to kind of refresh a program based on the pieces that you already have there? And so, again, I expect Oklahoma to win that game pretty handily. But that is probably the biggest wild card of the 3, where if Oklahoma does get an unexpected challenge in non-con, I would think it's Houston that gives it to them, especially because Willie Fritz is such a dang good football coach.
Yes, so it's Willie Fritz, not Tulane, Willie Fritz, Houston, folks. Of course, he moved from Tulane to Houston, Oklahoma's third opponent coming up in week 3, a team that they struggled with a couple seasons ago. And then the other announcement, of course, is Red River with Texas. Typically a noon Eastern, 11 Central, goes to 3:30. I'm sure it's been at 3:30 in the past, but I always think of this game being the 11 a.m. local time kickoff, ABC or ESPN, depending on where the teams stand and the network's decision at the time.
Yeah, Mark, I don't want to get on a soapbox. I have my thoughts on when this game should be played. Most recently, it was 2017 that this game kicked off at 2:30. I prefer 11 a.m. I know there are a lot of folks that prefer 11 a.m. I know there's also a very vocal faction that detests 11 a.m. So this is really where there's a very clear, very tense split between the 11 a.m. crowd and the never 11 crowd. I'm one of the ones that likes it at 11 a.m. I think it just makes sense. It's right to me for this rivalry to be played at 11 a.m. amidst the constant bustle at Texas State Fair. But I don't want to belabor the point. Obviously, that'll be a hugely significant game for both of those teams and has historically been a game that oftentimes dictates the trajectory of the remainder of the season for both of those programs. So that matters all the more now that you're in the SEC and you don't necessarily have any cream puffs on the other side. Yeah, I guess you got that non-conference matchup in November that every SEC team gets with an FCS opponent. OU gets Maine this year. But that'll be huge. That'll be a huge game for both Oklahoma and Texas, and one that has significant implications in terms of how competitive they're able to be in the SEC conference championship race in year one.
Parker, before we let you go, we will let Oklahoma fans know that over on the main channel, we released a series in which we looked at each conference and we went through all-time program rankings. And this is just not a spitball affair where, okay, we looked at just winning percentage or just one category. We went through winning percentage, bowl wins, major bowl wins. We went through AP poll points through the decades, top 5, top 10 finishes, top 25 finishes, NFL draft selections, first round selections, consensus All-Americans, and more. So what I would like to point out here, Parker, is the disparity between Oklahoma and Texas surprised me. That Oklahoma historically, when you add up the numbers across the board, is decidedly a better program in terms of all-time compilation of numbers than Texas.
Yes, it is, Mark. I probably shouldn't say much more because I'll get accused of being a mouthpiece. But yes, historically speaking, you're 100% correct. There is a large disparity there. And that's why I think there's so much confidence from the Oklahoma side that Brent Venables in this program are going to compete at a high level for a long time in the SEC because they have a coach that's been able to effectively channel and leverage the tradition and the history and the aura surrounding Oklahoma football. And obviously that tradition, that history, that aura takes on a new significance and an entirely new dimension now that they transition to the best college football conference in the country in the SEC.
And again, I've got a pretty good handle on history in this sport. And I knew that there was a gap, but it surprised me that it was as significant as it is. And obviously, it was amplified during this 28-year span together in the Big 12, where Oklahoma won half of the conference championships, completely dominated the conference top to bottom, starting in 1996, even though Nebraska was obviously a major player to begin that run. Parker, appreciate you being here so much. If there's anything that you'd like to pass on to everyone just in regards to what you've got going on, please do so.
Yeah, folks, follow me on Twitter at Parker Thune. There's only one of me, so you'll find me. If you're in the if you're in the Sooner State, you're within the borders of the state of Oklahoma, listen to KREF Sports 99.3 FM, 1400 AM. If you're outside the state and you're a Sooner fan, want to get your fill of daily OU sports content, download the KREF app. You can get live programming there 12 hours a day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then, of course, if you want all the juice on OU recruiting, behind the scenes team intel, all the good stuff that you can't say publicly, but is very accessible behind a paywall to members, as long as said information is kept sensitive by those members. You can head over to OUinsider.com on the Rivals Network. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, official visits are kicking off. We'll have updates, scoop, intel on all of the official visitors this weekend for Oklahoma, as well as the 2 weekends to come, as they look to put the finishing touches on an already very impressive 2025 class that ranks 3rd in the country right now.
Parker, thank you so much for making the time. Know that you've got a ton going on, so we appreciate you always being here.
Not a problem, Mark. Appreciate you.